We often celebrate the great athletes, the ones whose careers just go on and on for years, even decades. Endurance is what we value.
Longevity.
But there's this other kind of legend, one that's defined not by how long they lasted, but by just sheer intensity. They burn so brilliantly, so fast, that their story becomes immortal precisely because it was so brief.
And that tension, that brilliant brevity, that's really the entire focus of the sources you've shared with us today. We are diving into a story of raw talent that was, well, simply too fast and ultimately too fragile for the world.
Our focus today is the Japanese racehorse, Admire Vega. His racing career was just 8 starts long. His life, tragically, was only 8 years.
It's a devastatingly tight timeline. And yet his reputation is still golden decades later.
Right.
So our mission in this deep dive is to really look at the sources and figure out why this horse, despite that, astonishing brevity, is remembered universally as a brilliant comment.
He represents one of the great, what could have been stories in all of Japanese racing.
Absolutely.
And the sources really point to 2 things, 2 main pillars that created his myth. First, this incredible career-defining rivalry he had in 1999.
With Tiam Opera O and Narita Top Road.
The 3 kings. And second, his absolutely remarkable, almost predestined bloodline.
Yeah, what's fascinating here is that the narrative of his life was, almost entirely written before he was even born. The sources make it so clear that he wasn't just bred, he was engineered for greatness.
When you look at the reports from back then, the phrase that just keeps coming up is ridiculous pedigree.
It is.
It's just hard to imagine the expectations being any higher for a foal.
Well, you have to understand the gravity of his lineage.
Yeah.
Let's break that down for you because it's a master class in classic breeding.
Please do.
Okay, so you start with his sire, Sunday Silence.
A name that changed everything.
If you follow any Japanese racing history, you know that name means transformation. Sunday Silence, he arrived in Japan in the early 90s and just completely reshaped the country's racing.
Right.
He didn't just sire champions, he elevated the entire quality of the stock. He turned Japanese racing from a domestic sport into a world-class powerhouse.
So Admire Vega has that dynasty DNA right out of the gate.
Exactly. A powerful foundation.
Yeah.
But the sources are quick to highlight that the dam side was just as critical.
Yes, his mother.
His mother, Vega. And she wasn't just a good mare. She was a dual classic winning filly, one of the best of her generation. Her nickname was the Western First Star.
Wow. So she had immense quality herself.
Immense. And then if you trace it back just one more step to her sire.
Of his father.
That was Tony Benn, who was a Prix de l'Arc de Triomphe champion.
So you've got 3 generations of proven international elite performance. This wasn't a hopeful pairing.
No, this was a deliberate, sophisticated attempt to guarantee a champion.
And yet this is where the drama deepens, where the sources suggest fate was already involved before he was even born. He was conceived as a twin.
And this is a really critical point that adds to the whole myth. For those who might not know, carrying twins is incredibly risky in horses.
It threatens the life of the mare, right?
It threatens the mare. And the foals themselves rarely thrive. They're often weak or have developmental issues.
So what happened in Admire Vega's case?
The sources explained that because of the risks, a veterinary decision was made. One fetus had to be, reduced to ensure the survival of the mare and the other foal.
So Admire Vega was the survivor.
He was. The narrative just immediately established him as literally the foal chosen to live.
To be born with that kind of intense philosophical burden, the pressure of expectation must have been enormous. You're carrying the hopes of 2 potential lives.
And the future of this incredibly powerful bloodline. And this sense of destiny was just reinforced by the partnership they chose for him on the track.
The sources make a big deal of this. Beyond just the wins, what did having Yutaka as his jockey add to the story?
It added a sense of continuity, of reverence. Yutaka is a legend, but what's unique here is the beautiful symmetry of it all. He rode Admire Vega in every single one of his 8 starts.
From debut to retirement.
From the very beginning to the very end.
And the connection is deeper than just that.
Oh, much deeper. This is the same jockey who had guided his mother, Vega, to her classic victories.
So it's a literal passing of the reins from mother to son.
Exactly. For the fans, this just cemented the whole narrative. Admire Vega was the direct successor, the intended champion of this powerful family.
And that partnership started quickly. He debuted in November 1998, and, he crossed the line first, but was demoted in a steward's inquiry.
Right, for interference. But the reports from the time all highlight that even with the demotion, his raw speed was just undeniable. You could see the talent was there.
The fact that he was so powerful, even as a 2-year-old.
It convinced his connections. He was so clearly superior that he entirely skipped the maiden class.
Which is a huge signal of confidence in a young horse.
It is. For those listening who might not follow the terms, the maiden class is for horses until they win their first race. Skipping it means the trainers think you're already operating at a higher level.
And he went on to win his next start at Erica's show,
Proving them right. He then capped his 2-year-old season by winning the Radio Tampa High, what is now the G1 Hopeful Stakes, which basically confirmed he was a major player for the Triple Crown races.
And so he arrives right into the most anticipated season of his generation, the year 1999, and the formation of what became known as the Three Kings.
You had Admire Vega, the blue-blooded superstar. You had TM Opera O, the gritty, late-developing powerhouse.
And Narita Top Road, the consistent toughest-nails challenger.
3 horses, 3 very distinct styles, 3 massive fan bases, all vying for the Japanese Triple Crown.
The reports all agree that the fan anticipation for every single one of their meetings was just through the roof. It was like a heavyweight boxing trilogy.
It really defined that year. That classic season, however, it started a bit bumpy for Admire Vega. He finished second to Narita Top Road in the Yayoi Show, which is the key prep race.
And then came the first classic, the Satsuki Show.
Right, the 2,000 guineas equivalent. He actually fell ill just before, which clearly affected his performance. He finished a disappointing 6th.
And that race was won decisively by TM Opera O,
who suddenly looked like the rising star. It raised a serious question among the fans. Had the great bloodline, the chosen foal, failed when it mattered most?
It looked like the whole Destiny narrative might just stumble and break.
But Destiny recovered. Just in time for the biggest stage of all, the 1999 Japanese Derby.
This is it, the most prestigious race in the country, the 2,400-meter test at Tokyo Racecourse.
Winning the Derby defines a horse, it defines a jockey, it defines a bloodline. All that pressure, the pedigree, the partnership, the foal chosen to live, it all focused down on these few minutes.
Okay, so let's unpack this race, the Derby. How did Yutaka Tech handle it?
He gave Admire Vega a very patient ride early on, settling mid-pack. As they turned into that famous, long Tokyo Straight, the battle began. Narita Top Road made his move first.
He took the lead.
He did, and he was fighting brilliantly. For a moment, it really looked like he might just steal the whole thing.
We see that he was giving everything he had. Who came next?
TM Opera O came next, challenging Top Road for the lead. It was a proper classic duel, exactly what the fans wanted to see, the 3 kings fighting it out.
But the sources describe what happened next as just a sudden, overwhelming show of power.
That's the perfect way to put it. That moment when a horse finds another gear.
Yeah.
And Yutaka Take found a tiny bit of space, and Admire Vega unleashed that inherited Sunday silence acceleration.
Yeah.
He just stormed forward, and the reports all say he devoured them both in the final 100 meters.
Surged right past his 2 great rivals.
With shocking finality, yeah.
The result was stunning. He wins the Japanese Derby in 2.25.3, which actually tied the race record at the time.
He didn't just win. He fulfilled his destiny with a display of historic speed.
And that's the peak, isn't it? The moment that the sources say remains one of the most beloved classic victories in modern racing.
It is. This was the flawless chapter that cemented his name forever.
The rivalry wasn't done, though. After the Derby, he won the Kyoto Shimbun High, beating Narita Top Road again.
Right.
So the stage was set for the final jewel, the Kika Show, the Japanese St. Ledger, the 3,000-meter stamina test.
Everyone was desperate for that ultimate showdown, the final duel for the Triple Crown. But it wasn't to be.
What happened?
Admire Vega just struggled with the distance. He finished 6th, probably fatigued after a really grueling campaign. Narita Top Road won that race, securing his own slice of immortality.
NTM Opera.
Opera finished 3rd, but that setback only seemed to fuel him. He would go on to just completely dominate the older horse division, becoming one of the greatest of all time.
So that 6th place finish for Vega, sadly, marked the beginning of the end.
It really did. That's where the narrative of lost potential starts to truly crystallize.
And he was kept in training as a 4-year-old.
He was, yeah. Preparing for a big race, the Takarazuka Kinnan, where he would have finally faced TM Opera O again. But fate intervened once more. This time, cruelly.
The injury.
He suffered left suspensory ligament inflammation.
For those who aren't familiar with that kind of injury in an elite horse, what does that mean?
It's almost always career-ending at that level.
Yeah.
Suspensory ligament is just critical for support and power. Damage there means they can never really recover the speed and integrity to compete in a G1 race again.
So he was retired instantly.
Instantly, before he could fully challenge Opera O in that next phase.
That is the ultimate what if. I mean, fans mourned not just the loss of the horse, but the loss of that ultimate showdown. Imagine the races he missed.
The Japan Cup, the Arima Kinnan, all the major clashes where he could have dethroned Opera O. It created this enormous void in the sport. The sources talk about this collective sigh of disappointment across the country.
A champion built for greatness retired just as his biggest battles were supposed to begin. So he moved on to stud duty, and again, his bloodline promised immediate success.
And delivered. He was at stud for only 4 years, but in that incredibly short time, his influence was just undeniable.
He sired multiple G1 winners.
Multiple G1 winners, including some high-quality jump champions, which proved his versatility. He showed every sign that he was going to be an enormously influential, defining stallion for the next generation.
But the tragedy that seemed woven into his story from the start came full circle just 4 years later.
In 2004, suddenly and heartbreakingly, at only 8 years old, he died from a stomach rupture.
The timeline is just devastatingly short.
It adds to the mythos of his fragility. He left racing at 3 and he left the world at 8. The reports describe the national shock, labeling him once again as too fast, too bright, too soon.
So if we step back and synthesize all this, what does Admire Vega's story tell us about racing culture and why he still matters so much?
Well, his legacy isn't built on cumulative wins or seasons of dominance like TM Opros was. His legacy is built on the fact that he was the flawless Derby winner of his generation.
The essential component of that legendary Three Kings rivalry.
Exactly. He was a bloodline jewel who passed too early, leaving behind this unblemished memory of pure, unfulfilled potential.
He truly is the champion shaped by fate, born with immense expectation, chosen to live and destined to shine intensely, not endlessly. That 1999 Derby run is his immortal, flawless peak.
His resume was short, 8 races, 8 years, but his impact was just profound. He gave racing one chapter where everything aligned perfectly, where potential met destiny, and he secured that crown.
It makes you think about how we define greatness in sports history, doesn't it? We usually value the champions who endure, who fight year after year. But does the story of Admire Vega prove that some legends are immortalized precisely because they vanished at their absolute peak, leaving behind a pristine, powerful image of what might have been?
Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe for more.